Hey everyone, excited to bring you another Building with Set 2 KTOD video, this time looking at an all-space Boba Fett aggression list. So this is something I've been working on for a little while. Originally more of like a joke, like, hey, we'll play a bunch of space units, and then I just won a bunch of games with it. Did some internal testing and started to think, wait a second, is this deck broken? I don't know if we're at the broken stage yet, but in the initial stages of testing, this deck has certainly performed really well, and it's had some moments where it's like, oh man, this deck is getting close. I think anyone who's played TCGs for a long time, you start realizing, okay, when something is a bad idea, and when something is maybe missing one or two key ingredients, but it's getting there. So let's actually dive into the deck list to start off with. Usually I talk about the sort of breakdown of turns first, but I think given that this is a different type of deck, all space, let's take a look at the list to start off with and really talk about why I made some of the choices I made. So here's the deck list. You can see that every single unit in this deck is a space unit. There are 0 ground units other than the Boba flipping. And that the majority of the cards are very cheap, other than Fett's Fire Spray and the other big ship that we have at the end of the curve, the Raider. We are not necessarily playing 5-drops or anything like that. We have everything is low to the ground. Even removal, we don't have Waylay, even though Boba reduces its cost. I'll talk about why we don't have Waylay a little bit later on. We also don't have Open Fire. Every unit in the deck is a 1 through 3 costed unit, with the exception of the 2 big ships and the TIE Advanced, and we'll talk about why the TIE Advanced is so important in a second. Then the removal spells are also cheap, so oftentimes you're playing 2 cards in 1 turn, using Boba's ability to untap a resource and still jam a unit when you maybe play a Daring Raid or a Force Choke. So really lean, really aggressive deck, and one that oftentimes is susceptible to a control deck killing your units and then taking over with their big units. Well, in this case with Lurking TIE Phantom, they're going to have a really tough time killing it. So that's something that we're able to do. And then we also have Triple Dark Raid, which facilitates our sort of combo of Lurking TIE Phantom and TIE Advanced, and also pulls our big ships to finish the game as well. So let's talk a bit about the build around card. So Raid 2 on this ship allows it to attack for 4, but stat-wise and cost-wise, it's not that exciting, right? 3-cost ship, 2/2 is something we'd never be excited to play. The Raid 2 bumps it up a bit, but the exciting portion is that the opponent really can't kill it other than 2 specific instances. One is attacking into it. That's obviously the sort of clear choice. I'll attack my A-Wing into it. I'll attack my X-Wing into it. I'll attack my Kylo ship into it. So that's the one clear way that they can kill it. The other way that they can kill it is make an opening. But again, not going to be super concerned about one card killing it. It dodges the other removal spells. They can bounce it, but if they bounce it, you can play it again. And you can see we're not all in on like strapping this up with a whole bunch of upgrades or anything like that. We do have the TIE Advanced combo, but if they bounce your Lurking TIE Phantom because you played a TIE Advance, well, then you've got a Lurking TIE Phantom in hand and a TIE Advanced on the table, and they've just played a bounce spell, so you should still be ahead. A little bit about the rules with this card is that, cards like Power of the Dark Side, it shuts off. You can just funnel that into Lurking TIE Phantom. Cad Bane Leader, you can just put all your damage into Lurking TIE Phantom and it basically fizzles. So that's the wording and the way that the rules work with this card. So it's a build around card, and we're going to talk a little bit about how we're able to build around a single 3-drop in this deck. So let's first look at the principle of the deck, which is navigating, keeping your Lurking TIE Phantom around. And that is playing a turn 1 space unit. Now, this is important for a few reasons. One is that it pushes the tempo right away. The other thing, though, is that it's able to put you in a spot in conjunction with Tarkin Town, that you can always attack into their unit that they played in turn 1. So let's say an opponent plays an A-Wing, and then you play a Kylo's TIE. Well, on turn 2, you can attack directly into it. Let's say they play an A-Wing and you play Cartel Spacer and they attack into your A-Wing. Well, you can then kill the A-Wing with Tarkin Town. So you'll always have a clear lane in the first turn if you draw one of these plays, one of these combinations of cards, which allows your 3-drop ship to sort of be protected from early space units. And there's not too much ambush early in space. Obviously, there's ECL and there's Millennium Falcon, but there's not a ton of it. So we're able to be a little bit more secure and dodge some of the ambush. And that's one of the nice things about this deck, is that because it plays so much space, you're not having to deal with Bossk. You're not having to deal with like an ECL Poe ever, other than the Boba turn. So there's less sort of targets for your opponent to ambush. So I guess I should retract that. Boba can get ECL ambushed, but he's a sort of beefier unit in general. So you're able to push the tempo without having to deal with the ambush. One comment about Daring Raid Tarkin Town: that's able to kill really anything. If they don't, let's say they play like a Battlefield Marine, you can Daring Raid Tarkin Town it, and then jam a 2-drop, and now they've basically missed their turn 1 play, and you've got a nice one out there. All right, turn 2. We can't lean on a single card to mulligan for Lurking TIE Phantom, but Punishing 1 and 7 Fleet Defender are really good replacements for this. They're very aggressive cards. They've got little benefits that we'll talk about in the next slide, but they are able to. They're pretty sticky units as well. That shield for 7 Fleet Defender, 4 HP for Punishing 1. Phantom can't be targeted by damage or sacrifice effects. So your 3-drop is really going to sit there. So that's the linchpin of the deck. We want to ram on 1, protect that lane, and then place a aggressive space unit on turn 2. Turn 3 this is what I call unexpected aggression. So traditionally, especially with Boba Green, turn 3, unless you're hitting ramp, isn't all that aggressive. You're playing maybe another unit, hoping to get to that turn 4 where you can really explode that 5th resource turn. But TIE Advanced allows you to do some really bonkers stuff. And because we have triple Dark Raid, that can actually get us TIE Advanced. Triple Dark Raid on turn 3 can get us one of the bigger ships too, to attack him for a big chunk of damage, and then be in our hand for later on. But I actually really prefer TIE Advanced, especially if you've got either 7 Fleet Defender or Lurking TIE Phantom. You're able to push for a lot of damage, play a unit. If you play the unit, it's just there, and it pushes 2 experience tokens into damage. If you triple Dark Raid the unit, it actually bounces back to your hand, so you can play it the next turn. So you can theoretically have a 6/6 Lurking TIE Phantom that really will be almost impossible to beat for a lot of decks. So 6/6 that's attacking for 8. So there's some really, really cool interactions with TIE Advanced. It also works with TIE Fighter. Sometimes you have to do that. And it's just a pretty good body. It also helps offset some of, like, if they actually are able to sort of cobble something together post board and kill your unit, you've still got there's like a lot of space bodies around. After turn 4, your turn 4 is not as explosive with like a Boba 8 resource type of thing, but it's similar to like a Sabine deck where you're really just pushing damage. So oftentimes Boba will flip, and he'll attack for 4, and your space units will attack, and you're really racing. You're really like going to the face, and not necessarily. Well, but also Boba does a great job of killing like a fleet lieutenant that might be around, or something that's going to hit your base and keeps your space lane is going to be. You're going to pretty much have the advantage there, and Boba can kind of do a little mop-up duty or push 4 points of damage, unless they've got a Sentinel. Obviously, you've got your 2 big boys. Fet's Firespray and Raider. You can find those with Triple Dark Raid. Triple Dark Raid on Fet's Firespray sometimes will give you the ability to actually use Fet's Firespray's ability of exhausting the unit later in the game. So there's some really, really neat things you can do towards the later game as well. A deck doesn't necessarily fizzle out because you've got these big units. All right, let's talk a little bit about the removal spells. Swoop Down's a 3 of in the deck, as you saw. It allows you to control the ground with your space units, oftentimes not even trading with your space unit, they're going to be -2. So let's say you play a Kylo's Tie, they play a Battlefield Marine, one of the more powerful turmoil units that they can play. You can swoop down it. Only 1 damage would go to Kylo's Tie. You'd be attacking anything upwards of 5 damage, and then you'd untap a resource. So you wouldn't take any damage with your unit, and you'd untap a resource. So that's really, really strong. And then you can play another small unit. So then you're 2 units to their 0. So that was a pretty clear inclusion in the deck. Force Choke is 2 cost, but Boba reduces it to 1. It's really great at stopping these ground units that you're racing, so you don't totally care about giving them an extra card. Force Choke can sometimes kill a unit with an upgrade, like an experience token, and ready punishing 1, which is something that happens pretty common. So Force Choke, swoop down, daring raid. We're looking at cards that are just really cheap because we don't want to pay 3 on turn 2 for a waylay and open fire, and then we're not going to have anything to do with that extra resource. So everything is cheap because we want to be able to do removal and something else. And even though Boba's untapping 1, it's just not enough. So we're going really cheap with our removal spells. Surprise Strike, obviously we're racing, so Surprise Strike's great. It's also great with Lurking TIE Phantom, knowing that like your card's like not going to die. And then the last really, really exciting card here is Outmaneuver. Because we're an all-space deck, we can play Outmaneuver. Typically, we play this later in the game when they've sort of, we maybe killed 1 or 2 things on the ground, but now they've flipped their leader, and they've got maybe another unit or 2, and we're able to play Outmaneuver. It's especially powerful on the Boba flip turn because you can claim on resource 4, play Outmaneuver on the first action of resource 5. They tap all their ground units. You attack in space, and you actually flip your Boba, and he's ready to roll and push for 4 more damage. So similar to Magic, like the Cryptic Command type ability, or in our game, Cunning, this has that ability where they might have a bunch of units that don't even get to attack. I've actually thought about maybe playing 1 Cunning, but in these race situations, the games are oftentimes done on turn 5, and Cunning would cost 6. No Good to Me Dead is a 2 of. I would play the 3rd on the board for decks with like larger units, earlier units, and anything with the Darksaber. So that's the list. I'm really excited. I'm going to go back to the main deck picture here. I'm really excited to have you guys try this. It's somewhat of a combo deck. You're going to look at your hand sometimes, and you're going to say, I don't see how we're winning this. You're going to play a Lurking TIE Phantom, and you're going to play a TIE Advanced, and then you're just going to push for 6. Your opponent's going to draw cards and not really know what to do. They're going to say, I can't kill that card. I can't get into that spot. Boba decks, in some cases, have struggled against these control decks, and Lurking TIE Phantom completely shuts that down. They're going to be bringing cards in, like Make an Opening, but then you're going to have a lot of other robust threats in that realm of Vet's Fire Spray and Punishing 1. So, yes, maybe they'll hit a Make an Opening, but maybe you can play another Lurking TIE Phantom. So you're just a really, really aggressive deck against a lot of things, and I think this deck is really well suited to experiment. It's also fun to go, you don't play any space units. You don't play any ground units. I've got Outmaneuver, and I'm just going to keep attacking. So let me know in the chat what you think, if you think it actually is broken or not. I don't think it's quite there yet, but I think it's really, really exciting to try and new technology. All right, take care, everybody.